Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Cabinet meeting taking place today on the 17th of November 2022. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? And if a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up, or if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function. Please ensure that the chat function is only used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has got any difficulty in hearing or being heard, they should try turning their camera off, as this will or should help with the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so that they at least can hear and be heard as per the requirements. So with that, I shall move on to the main agenda. And just get my screen okay. And agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I can see that we're all on screen, so take it there are no apologies. Agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of November 2022. Can I take it that they're a fair reflection or true reflection of the meeting? Yeah, Gwyn's going to move, and Bronwyn, would you? Yep, you're seconding. Great. Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest. Do we have any today? Agenda item 4 is the use of the Chief Executive's powers. And this is to notify Cabinet, it's a normal housekeeping report, is to advise Cabinet of where the Chief Executive's emergency powers have been used since the last report, which was in the 8th of September 2022. And, you know, these are predominantly used either to sign off contracts to make sure that procurement is as speedy as possible, or sometimes to accept grants. So, you know, we have situations there where, say, for example, the housing upgrade to internal communal areas in 2.1c is a perfect example of wanting to get a contract sorted. The Cosmeston Gateway scheme at D is actually an acceptance of grant funding, and as is E, which is the capital funding grant to support the rollout of universal primary free school meals. So in terms of recommendations, the recommendation for us today is that the use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers be noted, and I would therefore move.
I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Everyone happy? Yes. Moving on to agenda item 5, and this is the Q2 sickness absence report 2022-23. This report comes to us on a 6-monthly basis, and then it goes to Scrutiny Committee for further discussion, and I'm sure that there will be a great deal of discussion around that. In terms of the figures, it does demonstrate that there is an increase year on year, and so we're currently at 5.87 days loss per full-time equivalent in this 6 months, as against a target of 4.15. The report itself goes through the figures by directorate, by types of absence, by causes of absence, I need to just amend a few figures on here, which seem to have been changed in the formatting. And so if you look at the table on page 3 under bullet 4.6, the figures under 2021 have actually been repeated from 2020, and that was a formatting error. I have the correct figures available, and they range from 432 in April, 470 in May, 465 in June, 388 in July, 233 in August, and 390 in September. They will be corrected, and the correct figures will be forwarded on to scrutiny if the recommendations are passed. Similarly, on the table at the bottom of page 4, under paragraph 410, in the centre, in terms of long-term absence, the 2021 figure for musculoskeletal somehow has had an extra 1 put onto the figure, because I thought it was interesting that we had more absences than we had staff. But so it's actually 2,677. And the box below, which is stress at work, or work-related stress, is 2,047. So take the 1 off that. They will be corrected with that. So as I said, it's got the figures in terms of breakdowns by type of illness, by directorate, whether short-term, long-term, or the total absences, and they will be, I'm sure, discussed at great length. On page 15, there is discussion of the support that the council does offer to members of staff in terms of the employee absence assistance programme and positive health promotion. I know that I think recently we've been doing some health promotion with colon cancer, and we also provide wellbeing and health screening to employees. Flu vaccinations are available through occupational health as well. And more recently, we have been supporting staff in terms of menopause as well. Each directorate takes reviews sickness absence on a regular basis to make sure not only that we are fully aware of the position within those directorates, but also that staff receive the right level of support should they be unwell. In paragraph 4.38 on page 17, it's quite interesting. There was a lot of discussion in a recent scrutiny committee about presenteeism, and Cabinet was asked to ensure the next report actually covered that. So this is covered, and it's interesting because the a CIPD survey had found that the vast majority of respondents had observed people coming into work when unwell, and they classified that as presenteeism. It's interesting that throughout my working life, I've always understood presenteeism where people were expected to sit at their desk and be present regardless of how much they were delivering, which is actually quite a negative managerial practice. And can have a damaging impact. So it'd be interesting to see the further conversation and discussion of that when this goes to scrutiny, because it says that and there was question about whether or not there was a greater degree of absence amongst people who were working at home or in the workplace, and they're about on a par. And in terms of Vale staff working at home or working or in the workplace, that was virtually on a par as well, 62% versus 63%. So some quite comprehensive figures. Thank you to the staff in the HR team that have pulled this together. And I think it's a lot of information that we can have a great deal more discussion on when it goes to scrutiny. So the recommendations before us on this report are that the report and the 6-month April to September 2022 sickness absence figures, which are in Appendix A, be noted, that the report be referred to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration, with any comments referred back to Cabinet for further consideration. And if I can add in there that the correct figures will be added to the report before it gets to Scrutiny Committee, if that's possible. And I'd move.
And I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you. And yes, everyone seems happy with that.
Sorry, Leader, Councillor John had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
I only just wanted to say, obviously, I'm sure we're all concerned with these figures, that they're increasing. And obviously, you know, scrutiny will, as you say, have a say on this. I'm very interested to see the outcome, Leader.
Yes, me too. Mark. Oops, you're on mute, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Leader. I just want to draw attention to 4.35 and the various initiatives that we are doing, and notably the volunteer policy. That means that at least member staff will have one day where they can volunteer activities within the Wales Council area. And the other initiative, which I think is a splendid one, is the menopausal cafe as well. And I think that's really good. And also, I think, well, I know it's been well received, and I know there's going to be further promotion will continue. And I think it is important that good public sector organisations such as ours continue to do this, and for other members of staff to understand the implications when people are going through the menopause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And actually, one thing that I had forgotten to mention on that is actually quite interesting as we move into the situation of living with COVID, and the number of people who have COVID, enough that, well, COVID, when they have COVID, they shouldn't be in work, obviously, for transmission purposes, but the number of people now that have had it not severely enough to be debilitated. And so quite often with Teams meetings, we're actually having meetings with people who say, actually, I'm positive at the moment, but, you know, I'm still in this meeting. So there's some interesting topics that we need to talk about and unpick. So I shall look forward to this going to Scrutiny Committee. So then moving on to the Council's, the draft Vale of Glamorgan Council Annual Delivery Plan for 23-24, which again will form part of the cycle for discussion. The Annual Delivery Plan sits in between the corporate plan, the 5-year corporate plan, and the directorate or the departmental service plans, which spell out the specific service delivery objectives. So this report sets out how it's been developed, how the draft plan has been developed, the proposed consultation, and the timetable for that consultation until we get to agreement in March of next year. The plan, which I said runs from 2023 to 24, is aligned to the Council's 4 wellbeing objectives, and they are to work with and for our communities, to support learning, employment and sustainable economic growth, to support people at home and in their community, and to respect, enhance and enjoy our environment. And so the draft plan, which is at Appendix A, sets out how we're going to meet those. But as we are in very challenging times, our plan also has 3 critical challenges. And to make sure that I have those exactly right, and they're found under paragraph 210, is the cost of living crisis, obviously, Project Zero, because we still have an ambition to become Project Zero carbon by 2030, and organisational resilience, and that's ensuring that we can continue to adapt in the face of adversity and provide our services despite the financial pressures and workforce challenges that we and many of our partner organisations face. So we will be cost-cutting those objectives with those critical challenges. As I mentioned, we are in particularly challenging times, and I'll speak more about that over the coming weeks as we're talking about budgets. And it's not just challenging for us, it's challenging for our residents, our communities and our organisations. And while we are meeting the critical challenges, it needs to be said that by the time we get to the final draft of this, we might find that we've had to change things in view of the current situation. So, you know, the objectives and the critical challenges form the basis of it. The draft plan is laid out under Appendix A, but we will be working through this, talking to our partners, full consultation on it as we go forward. So in terms of how we're going to get to March, obviously it's come here today, that this is laid out at the top of page 8. In November through to January, we'll be in consultation with the public, partners, staff, trade unions, town and community councils, and all scrutiny committees. In January, the draft annual delivery plan will be amended in response to that consultation feedback. And in February, it will come to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee to consider the revised delivery plan, back to Cabinet, and then eventually it will come to Council, come to a meeting of the full Council on the 6th of March next year to consider the final draft, or to consider the final draft of the annual delivery plan. So what's before us today is the recommendations that Cabinet, that we approve the draft annual delivery plan, which is at Appendix A, as the basis for consultation as described in this report. 2, that Cabinet approves the consultation approach and timetable as set out in this report. That Cabinet notes the approach taken this year to draft the annual delivery plan and the relationship with the annual service plans. So it's that golden thread between corporate plan, annual delivery plan and service plans. And 4, that Cabinet refers this report to all scrutiny committees as part of the programme of consultation, requesting any comments to be shared with the Director of Corporate Resources to inform revisions to the annual delivery plan. So this is the start of the process, and it will go into wide-ranging consultation now before it comes back to us in the new year. So I'd like to move those recommendations.
I'll second that.
Oh, Mark, did you want to come in?
Leader, I mean, I think this is an excellent plan for us to consider today, and I'd just like to highlight some features of it. On page 8, under Project Zero, we're talking about developing a green infrastructure strategy, and that will basically improve our housing, our schools and our other buildings. And also, we're very much about promoting active travel. And I think that is really important that we do that. But one thing that you will see in all your different communities in the Vale is electric vehicle charging points. They're going to be implemented, and some are starting to be put in already. And I know there's a big scheme coming up in the next few months. So I really welcome this, and I'd be very interested to hear the views of all our local communities on that, so that we can reflect it when we look at this again.
Thank you, Mark. Apologies, just a quick cough there. Yes, so no, it'll be interesting to see how that goes through consultation, the number of comments and what people's views are of it. Moving on to agenda item 7, and this is the Treasury Management Midterm Report. An interesting report, and as I said, you know, things are moving at such pace these days that it's good to try and keep up to date on it. There was a comment at a scrutiny the other day about finance. Well, it's difficult. And yes, it is difficult, but it's absolutely essential, and we need to keep on top of this. This said is the mid-year Treasury Management Report, and the report is prepared in compliance with SIPFA's Code of Practice on Treasury Management, and this report covers the following areas. There's an economic update as of 30th of September this year. There's a review of the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy for 2022-23. A review of the Council's capital expenditure and prudential indicators. A review of the Council's investment portfolio for 2022-23. I think I've just lost my point there. A review of the Council's borrowing strategy for 2022-23 and debt rescheduling undertaken during 2022-23. In terms of the economic update, which is on page 5, there's a detailed report of the factors that were driving the UK economy during the period under review up to 30th of September of this year. A brief forecast of what might potentially happen following the medium-term fiscal event on the 17th of November 2022. Well, we've all heard that now, but it will take a little bit of time to analyse it and work out what that means for us. I shall hopefully make a further statement on that next week. An analysis of interest forecasts for the period 2022 to September 2025. In the Treasury Management Strategy 2022-23 review, there are no policy changes as of 30th of September. All Treasury management activity undertaken complied with the approved strategy and the SIPFA Code of Practice and the relevant legislative provisions. The broader range of approved investment tools available to the Council were utilised, and these were the Debt Management Office, local authorities, Treasury bills, money market funds and interest yielding bank deposit accounts. Due to market volatility and elevated borrowing costs, all new borrowing will be financed internally. The Council maintains an under-borrowed position. This means that the capital borrowing need is not fully funded with external loan debt, as cash supporting the Council's reserves, balances and cash flow are used as an interim measure to finance the Council's borrowing requirement. In terms of the Council expenditure and prudential indicators review, the Treasury Management prudential indicators are based on the capital programme approved at Cabinet on the 3rd of November of this year, and includes the reprofile of the City Deal Scheme, which was approved by emergency powers. The prudential indicators detailed within the report compare the original estimates approved at Council on the 7th of March this year with the revised estimates for 2022-23. In addition, the report introduces a new Treasury prudential indicator, the liability benchmark, and that's required by the December 2021 revised Prudential Code, which becomes mandatory from 23-24. The liability benchmark is effectively the net borrowing requirement of a local authority plus a liquidity allowance. And in its simplest form, it's calculated by deducting the amount of resources available for investment on the balance sheet. So that's reserves, cash flow balances, etc., from the amount of outstanding external debt, and then adding the minimum level of investments required to manage day-to-day cash flows. For the investment portfolio, the table shows the movement of the council's investment portfolio from 1st of April 2022 to 30th September 2022, listing the counterparties with whom funds were invested. Investments as of the 30th September were 96.345 million, up from 96.320 million as of the 1st of April. Interest at an average rate of 0.97% and amounting to 0.406 million included accrued interest was received from 1st of April 2022 to September. In accordance with the code, the councils continue to have regard to security and liquidity of its investments before seeking the highest return or yield. And so in terms of our borrowing strategy for this year, the table shows the movement of council's debt portfolio from 1st of April to 30th of September, listing the financial institutions from which funds were borrowed. External debts as of 30th of September was 154.328 million, up from 153.347 million as of the 1st of April. The council borrowed 2 new loans for 2 million and 1 million at interest rates of 3.05 and 3.11 respectively to fund matured debt, and loans repaid totaled 2.109 million at a rate of 4.91%. External interest at an average rate of 4.48% and amounting to 3.396 million was paid on these loans during the first 6 months of 2022-23. And internal borrowing will be maximised where possible and will be charged to revenue using the 3-month sterling overnight interest rate. The average rate calculated to the 30th of September is 1.71%. The estimated total interest to be charged to revenue for internal borrowing for pooled loans for 22-23 is 0.895 million. When pooling the interest charges for external and internal borrowing, the average rate charged to council to deliver the capital programme is estimated to be 4.08%. And finally, in terms of debt rescheduling, the opportunities have been very limited in the current economic climate. No debt rescheduling has therefore been undertaken to date in the current financial year. It is comprehensive, but as I said, I think that in the current environment, we need to ensure that we are completely on the top of financial management. We've always been a very prudent council, and that puts us in good stead for the times ahead. But we do need to make sure that we have a depth of detail in our report. So thank you to the officers that have prepared the report. Recommendations on this are that Cabinet approves the Treasury Management mid-year report for the period 1st of April 2022 to 30th of September 2022 and refers the same to Council in December 2022 for consideration. That the latest Treasury Management indicators be approved and referred to Council in December 2022 for consideration, and that notwithstanding recommendations 1 and 2, the report also be forwarded to the next Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration and discussion. I would move, and I'm bringing in Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, but I also like to make a point really. I think our strategy is absolutely right, given the huge uncertainty in our economy at the moment. And I think prioritising security and liquidity over perhaps speculative investments is something that we shouldn't be doing, and we haven't been doing. And this is why financially our council is one of the strongest councils in Wales in terms of our financial position. Okay, it's very tempting to go for high returns, but high returns often comes with risk, you know. So I think of a strategy of a low risk, relatively low return strategy is the correct one. But nevertheless, you know, a savings interest rates will benefit the council quite a lot, but we also bearing in mind that it also has a double-edged sword in the sense that the cost of borrowing could go up. And this is why I think using our internal resources is the correct strategy to comply. So I'm more than happy to second this approach.
Thank you, Mark. And everyone else happy with that? Yep, no dissent on that. So agenda item 8 is quite a straightforward report in that Cabinet way back in April 2018 considered a report relating to the council's duty to conduct a community review, and that resolved that a full community review in line with the Local Government Democracy Wales Act 2013 for the Vale of Glamorgan be commenced in June 2023. So this report is to update members of the council's community review and the process to be adopted. So the report basically sets out in paragraph 2.4 the 4 essential steps that are required to conduct the review, and that the council, in consultation with the commission, will be the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales, has developed a proposed terms of reference at Appendix A, and the terms of reference sets out the proposed timetable and procedures for the review to provide guidance, and sets out the issues that will be considered during the review. Community councils will, of course, have the opportunity throughout their engagement in the community review to ensure that the boundaries of their community reflect how their community operates on the ground, and the representation of their constituents is appropriate. And so if you look at Appendix A on the terms of reference, that actually explains why it's being undertaken, what the aim of it is, and how it will go forward. Part of our duty as a principal council. Fairly straightforward. Gwyn, would you like to come in before I give the recommendations, or after? I think you're on mute.
Mm-hmm.
Gwyn, I think you're still on mute.
There we are. Sorry about that, leader. Yes, as the leader of Llantwit First Independence, I sat on this group, and we've had some good meetings and discussions on this, and I refer you to Appendix B, which basically refers halfway down the page. We talk about the communities created will fall into one or two of these 3 categories: rural, urban and mixed. And basically the electors per councillor laid out on this document met with all the wishes of the members of that committee. So it was very straightforward in the end of the day, and quite honestly, it was a very good meetings, I should say. And now it comes through us as Cabinet and on to the Boundary Commission. So I'm sure that it'll be met by community councillors in due course. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwyn. And Mark, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'd just like to come in on this. I think this is really important for our communities, especially when we got lots of new developments. And some people may think they belong to one community as opposed to actually belong to another community. And I think this is where perhaps, you know, community councils, whether
Yeah.
they're town councils or community councils, should in fact get really involved in this and engage with those local communities to see if they want any change or in fact want to establish their own council. Because I think, you know, given the times that we live in, I think it's vital that people seek as much representation as possible. So thank you.
Thank you both. So the recommendations before us are that a full community review of the Vale of Glamorgan Council be commenced in January 2023, that Cabinet has regard to the process and relevant timescales for the Vale of Glamorgan Council's community review as included in the appended terms of reference. 3, that the Local Democracy Boundary Commission for Wales and all other mandatory consultees be formally notified of the revised commencement date of the next Vale of Glamorgan Community Review. 4, that a copy of this report be referred to the Community Liaison Committee and in the interim to all town and community councils in the Vale of Glamorgan Council for information. And finally, that a copy of this report be referred to full council in December 2022. And I'd move.
I'll second those, Leader.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And we're all happy with that. Super. Next, we move on to the initial housing revenue account budget and revised budget 2022-23 and proposals 2023-24. And so it sets out the revised budget, and I goes without saying again that, you know, operating in a very challenging environment with higher inflation, cost of living crisis, supply costs, additional borrowing and high interest rates, which impacts also on the cost of borrowing. The revised budget 2022-23 has increased from a deficit of 11.077 million to 16.516 million, which will be funding from the housing revenue account reserves. The housing revenue account reserve level as of the 31st of March of this year was 17.439 million, which was higher than expected due to lower capital expenditure, which was being incurred in the last financial year. This drawdown will bring the housing revenue account reserve balance back into line with the housing business plan for 31st of March 2023. The initial budget for 2023-24 has a surplus budget of 26,000. The rent policy notification, which was due from Welsh Government, has just been received, and whereas we'd modelled on a rental increase of 2.75%, we will currently be bringing a report to Cabinet once we've fully analysed the information from Welsh Government. The 2023-24 budget has assumed a reduction in capital expenditure revenue account of 12.745 million, bringing the budget contribution to 5.707 million. And this will leave an anticipated balance in the housing revenue account reserve of 949,000 as of March 2024. The significant cost increases in 2023-24 are capital financing due to additional borrowing, increase in interest rates and higher repair costs due to an increase in supply costs and schedule of rates. So currently work is underway on producing the housing business plan for 2023-24, which will be presented to Cabinet in January 2023. So moving on to the recommendations today, and that's firstly, and I'll be making a slight amendment because of the changes since this was written, that one, that Cabinet approves the revised housing revenue account budget for 2022-23 as set out in paragraph 2.2. that Cabinet approves the initial housing revenue account budget proposal for 2023-24 as set out in paragraph 2.11, that the revised 2022-23 budget and initial proposals for 23-24 be referred to Scrutiny Committee as Homes and Safe Communities for consideration, and that that Scrutiny Committee Homes and Safe Communities be requested to refer comments to the Scrutiny Committee Corporate Performance and Resources as the lead Scrutiny Committee in order for their views to be forwarded to Cabinet. And finally, number 5, and this is the one I want to make a slight change to, is that Cabinet notes the increase for rent and other services are subject to future report to Cabinet. As and the recommendation did say as soon as the guidance is issued by Welsh Government, and it said, so I will say subject to a future report to Cabinet following receipt of guidance by the Welsh Government, as that has just come in and we need to work through that now. So I would move those recommendations.
And I'll second those.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And everyone happy with that? Yeah. And then agenda item 10 is an update on the Civico hybrid meeting platform. And I think the reason that we are all sitting in various locations, quite a lot of us in the civic offices, but in various locations, some of us outside the office, is because of some of the challenges that we faced with implementing the hybrid meeting platform. And so the purposes of this report is to update Cabinet on the work that's been carried out to date, issues that have been encountered and the subsequent fixes that have been applied to mitigate issues. So just to give a little bit of history, really, back during the pandemic, as we all know, it was required that all meetings were convened remotely. And then, once that was working, broadcast live to the internet for public viewing. From May 2022, Welsh Government legislated that local authorities in Wales would conduct their council meetings in a manner where those not in the same place for the meeting could attend remotely, provided that people were able to speak and be heard by each other and to see and be seen. And that has actually formed the basis of the council's multi-location policy. That Act, the Welsh Government Act, was a catalyst for the council to implement a hybrid meeting platform. And a hybrid meeting is very specific in terms of it means that people should be able to attend both within the council offices or at other locations. But adding to that, there are also other requirements, and one is that full simultaneous translation facilities should be provided as well. I think it needs to be said that there are a number of providers in this area, but not all could meet all of those requirements to provide hybrid meeting platform at the same time as Welsh language translation facilities. That we're aware that, as I said, that there are some, and also that it is difficult to provide support sometimes for members if non-council equipment is used, because we actually do have remote support facilities where people can log into your laptop if you're not in the meeting, if you're not in the council chamber, and get support. And sometimes, you know, there are glitches. But the work to date that's been carried out, and this has been carried out at the provider's expense, is laid out in paragraph 2.5 of the report. And so, you know, servers have been reconfigured. There've been a second infrared emitter. We've had to make sure that things like induction loops to support people with hearing impairment have not clashed with some of the other equipment, that the audio levels in the council chamber and remote attendance have also been balanced, and making sure that various systems all work together. So that's ongoing. There is a plan of testing that will be going on through November and December, and that will be of meetings of different sizes, with different participants using different parts of the technology to make sure that all works effectively, and that hopefully we will be able to start fully with hybrid meetings in the new year, if that all goes according to plan. I think I also need to clarify in light of some recent comments that have been made. Technically, members can attend the council offices in the interim. In fact, as I said, a number of us are in the council offices today. So, you know, that could be the case whilst Microsoft Teams continues to be used prior to Christmas. The only issue is that we need to wear, if we're in the same room, we need to be wearing headphones to stop interference. So it can be done. It can be done if people feel that they really need to be in here. But I said members would need to access meetings during the short period through Microsoft Teams platform and the council's Lupus network in-house. But it can be done if people feel the need to. Other people find that not driving for an hour to get into the council chamber or being able to juggle multiple commitments works better for them, and they are able to do that as well. So the recommendations that we have before us today are that Cabinet notes the update as set out in this report, that Cabinet endorses the approach proposed to regression testing, and exactly what is regression testing is it within the report, to inform a decision on whether to go live with the Civico hybrid meeting platform for public meetings from January 2023. 3, that Cabinet refers this report to Scrutiny Committee, Corporate Performance and Resources for their consideration with regards the approach outlined in this report. 4, that Cabinet approves the proposal for this report to be sent via email to all elected members for their information. And 5, that a further report be brought to Cabinet in due course to provide a further update on related matters. I'd move.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Super, everyone happy? Super. And then moving on to agenda item 11, and it means I can turn my microphone off and cough again, is a report from the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and Welsh Language, and that's the Learning and Skills Investment Strategy. Over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. It gives me pleasure to introduce the Learning and Skills Investment Strategy. It's a very thorough and detailed document, so I make no apology for the length of this. The Learning and Strategy Investment document consolidates the relevant legislative and policy considerations at a national and local level, which direct how the department makes investment decisions. It identifies a series of priority actions aligned against the Council's corporate plan to ensure investment decisions deliver upon corporate objectives. It sets out the key considerations which inform investment decisions, which are school organisation and demand for school places, condition suitability and sufficiency of school buildings, and tackling decarbonisation of school assets and improving ecological value. The Council drew up a school investment strategy as a result of the Welsh Government's target that all schools should be fit for purpose. Condition surveys and strategic school property appraisals were carried out and assisted in the development of the school investment strategy. Since this, the Welsh Government set out the 21st Century Schools programme, now known as Sustainable Communities for Learning, with Band A being concluded in 2019. The second wave of investment, Band B, commenced in April 2019 and ends in 2024. The programme requires the Council to meet the following investment objectives: addressing growth in demand for Welsh medium education, reductions of surplus capacity and inefficiency in the system, expansion of schools in areas of increased demand for educational services, address condition of educational assets, and making assets available for community use where demand exists. Prior to the 21st Century Schools programme starting, the Council developed Cowbridge Comprehensive School in 2010 and Penarth Learning Community in 2014 with investment from Welsh Government. Penarth Learning Community project represented a 50.34 million investment for the creation of 2 new schools in a single building on the site of St Sire's School in Penarth. As well as providing new facilities for St Sire's, the mainstream comprehensive school, the project created a new SEN school, Ysgol y Derry. Cowbridge Comprehensive School represented a 21.5 million investment. This included the complete construction of a new building and the refurbishment of several existing buildings. Also, a multitude of sports facilities were constructed. Several of these can be used by the public outside school hours. Band A of the 21st Century Schools programme started in 2014 and ended in 2019. This saw 30.3 million invested in schools within the Vale, delivering the following projects: Ysgol Gymraeg Nant Talwg, Ysgol Gymraeg Waun y Nant and Oakfield Primary School, Ysgol Gymraeg Dewi Sant, Llantwit Learning Community, Colcott Primary School, Romilly Primary School. Band B has seen the development of significant enhancements in a truly aspirational programme of improvements. Band B has already delivered expansion of the school's Welsh medium school at Ysgol Bro Morgannwg, which included the refurbishment and extension of the secondary school. Furthermore, 2 brand new state-of-the-art sites for Whitmore and Pencoitra secondary schools have been delivered and are in operation. New primary provision has been delivered at St David's Church in Wells Primary School. Wales's first carbon-neutral school at South Point Primary School have also been delivered. In addition, new school developments are underway or planned, including a new site for Ysgol Sant Barach at Barry Waterfront, a new building for St Nicholas Church in Wells Primary School, a new primary provision at Cowbridge Comprehensive, creating an all-through school 3 to 19, and a further site to develop special education at Penarth under the management of Ysgol y Derry. This is being progressed to cater for the significant growth in demand of such provision. Total investment stands at 148.8 million, which includes significant contributions from the Council of 47.7 million. The investment strategy seeks to achieve the following: appropriately manage the supply and demand of school places across the Vale to fulfil the local authority's statutory duty in providing sufficient school places, to improve the management of educational capital investment in school buildings and close liaison with the diocesan authorities who have responsibility for capital investment in voluntary aided schools. Continue to liaise with other council departments, including the planning department, and propose new developments. Working with colleagues across the council to make sure as well as our schools, to make sure where possible, necessary changes required to school buildings and sites for pupils requiring access arrangement in educational settings where they're deemed outside the school's responsibility to deliver reasonable adjustments. We also want to review existing assets and rationalise assets which are not required as part of the department, identify where these assets can be sold or transferred to reduce revenue costs, or provide capital receipts for reinvestments in the education development programme. To prioritise local businesses to deliver investment projects, ensuring Sell to Wales is used in procurement for projects and help to develop a local database of SMEs within the authority area, and to ensure the education estate is maintained to an operational standard to allow provision to continue throughout the authority. We also want to provide community access across the education estate where appropriate, including access in both outdoor and indoor facilities. Support local communities through the energy crisis through the provision of warm spaces in school buildings accessible to the community. Seek to open available services within school buildings, including community accessible Wi-Fi and other digital services. Supporting active travel routes as part of investments, identifying opportunities in collaboration with internal and external partners to reduce reliance on cars for both staff and users of school buildings. The strategy also identifies different funding sources available to the Council to deliver investment opportunities. The main sources of capital funding are capital receipts, reserves, borrowing, Section 106 financial obligations. All investment opportunities seek to minimise the need for borrowing. This is achieved through utilising other available funding sources external to the Council, such as Welsh Government grant funding. An additional land and property within the education estate which is not required should be reviewed and sold where appropriate to provide funding for projects in the Learning and Skills Investment Programme. The scale of education investments represents an opportunity to deliver upon multiple Council and Welsh Government objectives. The strategy document sets out how this will be achieved and the relevant considerations which must inform investment decisions. So there are two recommendations: that the Learning and Skills Investment Strategy 2022 to 2027 be considered and endorsed, and that Cabinet refer the report to the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee. If those recommendations could be approved, please.
I'd be absolutely delighted to second those. And I think even the first page, if you look at paragraphs 1.3 down to 1.5, just those details are stunning in terms of not only the amount of development that's happened since 2010, but the impact that has delivered in terms of the local economy as well. So I think a superb piece of work. I think it's good that we don't purely focus on new builds, and that we also look at how we ensure that all our other schools are of a good standard with the right capacity, so that children can have spaces in schools in their local communities. So thank you ever so much for bringing this, and I'll look forward to the discussions in Learning and Skills Scrutiny. Wyn, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, Leader, I think this is an excellent report. It details all the achievements throughout the years, and quite honestly, we as a coalition have been involved in this right the way down the line. And I absolutely think it's a great read, and well done to all the education team and Rhiannon for bringing this report to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. I was actually asked in scrutiny this week whether or not, in terms of, with prices going up, and I was told at what point, would there be a point at which you'd sort of stop a development? And I said, well, some you always have to, you have to re-examine, if prices are going up. But as long as we've benchmarked our developments against others, as long as we've done a double check with Welsh Government in terms of whether or not the funding layout is suitable, then actually, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest investments we can make in the Vale of Glamorgan is in its children. And I think that the school investment plan is a super piece of work. So thank you to the team in Sustainable Communities for Learning for the amount of work that's gone into this. I won't embarrass them by naming them. Thank you, Rhiannon.
Okay, so I'd just like to make the point there that I know there has been criticism of further school plans that we have in the pipeline, and to make the point that not only do we have a legal obligation to cater for children of all shapes, sizes and abilities, but then I feel we have a moral obligation to do so also, and it offends me that people would think otherwise.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So moving on, we go on to agenda item 12, and this goes over to Mark for some three reports. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Leader. And we've just had a report on the school investment, and really this follows on from the considerable amount of investment in our housing as well. So this report is really about a sort of update on where we were in terms of WHQS, in terms of doors maintenance. And really this report is about the future and what we're going to be doing. So what it is basically about looking at fire door services, maintenance and repairs and installation framework for 22-25. And what is very important to identify here, okay, is really in terms of the background, okay, we delivered huge amounts of replacement fire doors over the last 3 years. But what we also got to make sure is that our current doors are regularly inspected, which they are, and they comply. And that's very important. We're all probably aware what happened at Grenfell Tower. We all got to be very aware of the issues of fires, especially in flats. And it's very important that we as a council are continually, and I know we are continuing to keep on top of this matter, which is why I think it's very important that we do invest and to make sure that our fire doors are legally compliant. And this is why they are regularly looked at and if necessary need to be replaced. And one of the things that we've got to make sure, and we've got to say this to our tenants as well, is to make sure the doors are always closed, because that is so important to, you know, because that's how fire spread, is when people have doors open, they should remain closed. And therefore, because this report has I'm almost, until we make the big recommendations are really on the part 2. So I'd like to move that we note the content of this report, review or taking decisions on the award of contract, which are then detailed in the part 2 later on the agenda. So I'd like to move that. Do I have a seconder?
Thanks, Mark. I'm happy to second. Yes, we've got the detail of what they want to do, but actually the commercially sensitive information is kept for the part 2, so we'll discuss that further then. So everyone was nodding, so we're okay on that. And you ready to go on the Severn Avenue external environmental refurbishment scheme, and that's agenda item 14.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, this is a report
Sorry,
on
Leader,
Longmeadow
you've missed an
Court
item.
sheltered.
I've just missed an item, Mark. You can't trust me, can you? So no, we're doing Longmeadow Court. Sorry, agenda item 13.
Yes, apologies. I'll just go back to that. Yeah, it's on Longmeadow Court. This is a sheltered housing scheme within the area of Cowbridge. And basically, the background to this is between 2012 and 2018, the council delivered a major investment programme, as we know, to meet the requirements of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard, locally known as WHQS. During the maintenance process phase between 2018 and 22, the council has continued to maintain our housing stock to ensure compliance of WHQS. These works not only contribute to maintaining the WHQS, but also work towards lowering the carbon emissions within the council housing stock. And that's very important here, because what we want to try and do is, as you know, one of the big issues at the moment facing a lot of communities out there, a lot of people out there, is the cost of fuel and energy. And really, you know, WHQS has a real advantage by ensuring that people's costs are in fact lower. So, you know, as part of this scheme, we're going to be doing lots and lots of works at Longmeadow Sheltered Housing Scheme. We're going to put in new roof coverings, fascias, soffits and rainwater goods, UPVC windows and doors, removal of cavity wall insulation and installation of external wall insulation, and replacement of wall ties and the construction of new porch. I mean, I have seen this, and I know along with the leader that the works that we've had in St Luke's in St Paul's Avenue in Penarth, and the benefit is done to people in reducing some of their costs as well, in terms of and how much warmer those properties are. And this will also benefit the residents of Longmeadow Court. But again, I like to move the recommendations here that we note the content of this report, review or take decisions on the award contract, which will be detailed within part 2. So I like to so move it. And do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, and I think everybody else is as well. So that's accepted. And
thank you very much. Okay.
And I will get myself right now. It's over to agenda item 14.
That's right, and it's my final report here, and this is on 7th Avenue, external refurbishment scheme, and this was in the ward of Ilted. I know the members have been consulted on that, and basically the background to this, again, we did WHQS in this area. The 7th Avenue external refurbishment scheme was identified, but because unfortunately just during 2021 we had the pandemic, the actual project was delayed. And this includes, and in terms of the development that we're doing there, we're talking about refurbishment of 5 blocks, which includes external wall insulation, structural repairs, new roof coverings, new stairs, case, curtain walls, and remodeled communal gardens and drying areas. And again, we went through Sale to Wells, who are basically providers in terms of a leaseholder tender process. So I'd like to then move to the recommendations, that we note the content of this report, review or take decisions on the award of contract detailed in the part 2. So I'd like to so move that.
Thank you,
Anyone
Mark.
like to second that?
And I'll second that.
Thank you
And
very much, Leader.
Everyone else is nodding, so we're okay.
Thank you.
And then we'll come back to those at part 2 later. Next, we have Margaret. This is another exciting report. The draft older persons housing strategy.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm very pleased about this report. It's been something we need to do. The older persons housing strategy sets out the local agreement long-term vision for housing in the Vale of Glamorgan. It provides a statement of local strategy, housing related objectives and agreed target outcomes. The strategy covers a period of 14 years and the vision should be viewed within context of the corporate plan. The proposal of the older persons housing strategy 22 to 36 sets out the vision for the Vale of Glamorgan Council, which is to secure the best quality of life for the older people to live and independence as possible in later life. This means delivering a range of accommodation that enables older people to live fully lives and enjoy good health in attractive homes that meet their needs and allow them to continue in their independence at any age. The vision for the older persons will be activated in 4 key ways: supporting older people to stay put, and endeavouring older people to move to housing better suited to their needs in later life, promoting community concerns and housing diversity and introducing health and social care for them. And we're hoping this will help them to enjoy their full life in older times for them. This strategy does not detail all the activities being undertaken to improve services and the quality of life for older people in the Vale. It does, however, provide a high-level version and framework which highlights the key issues and the strategy seeks to address. The actions within the strategy will be monitored against the desired outcomes, and regular process reports will be considered by the Homes and Safe Community scrutiny meetings. And I can't wait for this to happen. We need this important document to set out everything. Reason to look after the senior citizens, the older people in our communities, for them to have a healthier life. The recommendation says 3. The Cabinet notes that the content of this report and agrees the draft older persons housing strategy 22 to 36 in principle suggests its constitution by the Relative Scrutiny Committee. The draft older persons housing strategy is referred to the Housing and Safe Community Scrutiny Committee for its consideration. The strategy and the views of Security Committee will be considered by Cabinet period to the final strategy being agreed. So I move.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm very happy to second that. I think it's hugely important that I know I share a lot of people's experience that quite often talking to older residents, there can be a fear of how they're going to cope as they get older. And for those of us that went down recently to the Lorna Velin Wint housing development off Hayes Road and saw that they were houses for life with wet rooms downstairs and you know, power put at the bottom of the stairs so that they could be a stair lift in if necessary, so that people actually had homes for life. And I think one thing that keeps coming back is so that our older residents know that they will continue to live as independently as possible, and that also ensures that they have dignity as well as they grow older. So I think that this is a super strategy, and again look forward to the discussions in scrutiny, which I hope will be detailed and comprehensive. So I'm delighted to second. Everybody happy to support? Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Then moving over to Eddie for the corporate safeguarding mid-year report.
Thank you, Leader. Taking this report then, this is an issue which affects all areas of Vale of Glamorgan, and this particular report's about the corporate responsibility to ensure that there are effective arrangements in place for safeguarding children and adults at risk. This report provides a mid-year update on the effectiveness of those arrangements and the developments to date. A corporate safeguarding group, CSG, ensures that there is scrutiny and assurance of corporate safeguarding arrangements. You can see the background from the report. This report gives a sort of composite. It's activity across all the council. It's not just one particular area. And often we think that social services are the ones that are key, but this actually involves the whole council, and there are various departments that, as part of the scrutiny. The 1.2 there talks about the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and that was implemented in 2016, and it brought about changes in particular relating to introduction of a duty to report, which has meant the revision of the corporate safeguarding policies, and that's part of this, is to bring attention to that policy for all staff, and the duty that required. The working together to safeguard people guidance, that provides guidance on corporate safeguarding for the council, and this provides advice on what should happen if an individual is concerned about well-being or welfare of a child or an adult at risk. And certainly, more recently, particularly with the COVID and everything, we're identifying more sort of signs of individuals requiring support. The key issues for consideration in this report is that the Corporate Safeguarding Group continues to place a strategic overview of all the activity across the local authority, and is a conduit for exploring emerging issues and priorities, such as I've just mentioned there. And these are cross-cutting. The CSG group meets on a quarterly basis, and interestingly enough, as part of the work of the Regional Safeguarding Board, priorities have been shared with the members, and the practice reviews that have been published and the associated learning from these have been shared and noted by the Corporate Safeguarding Group. And as a result of that, there are plans to focus on dissemination of learning and recommendations from that. And this, hopefully, there's plans for a work group to be put into place to work through those recommendations. In 2.3, you can see the safer recruitment data is also regularly reported to the CSG group, and any areas of note being actioned and discussed. Interestingly enough, you can imagine with teachers, thankfully at the moment we've got safer recruitment taking place, and we're 100% compliant, which is good news for the council. Some priority work areas within the CSG, they've identified that there are going to be the development of safeguarding data. As with all these things, you learn as time goes on, doesn't quite give us all the detail that we need. So there's going to be some development on that. There's going to be a review of safeguarding training and accompanying materials. And I mentioned the work group has been put into place, and also there's going to be some progressing developments in response to audit, and we'll consider wider quality assurance activities. As you can imagine, we've got corporate leadership and accountability, and these can be the people who are involved with that are on the Safeguarding website. There are set designated leads for within each directorate, and also there's a lead member, which happens to be me, responsible for that within the corporate safeguarding group. Let's see, the corporate policy. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's when we talk about policy, something like this does impact on all of us, employees, volunteers, school governors, elected members, contractors, partners, and so we've ensured that there is a good induction and training of so that they are aware of their responsibilities to comply with the safeguard policy. Let me see. There was a review of the corporate safeguard policy this year, and this is currently in draft format, and that will strengthen the corporate safeguarding responsibilities even further. Okay. Interestingly, part of that training that I mentioned earlier for all staff, there is a review of the IDEV mandatory training, which that took place early in the year, and the current training module has been replaced with a new national Group A training module, which is in fact coming as part of the National Safeguarding Training Standards, which has been launched this month, and hopefully that will provide further in-depth training for all staff and members and the like. I think that's the main part of the report. So in essence, we're in a good place. There's lots going on. So I'll just go to the recommendations. The Cabinet considers the work that's been undertaken to improve corporate arrangements for safeguarding and protecting children and adults. 2, the Cabinet continues to receive 6 monthly reports on work carried out to monitor corporate safeguarding arrangements and its effectiveness. And 3, that the report is referred to all scrutiny committees for their consideration. So move, Leader.
Thank you, Eddie, and I'm happy to second those as well. And everyone in agreement?
Yeah.
Super. So moving on, we have agenda item 17, which is the Local Air Quality Management Annual Progress Report 2022. And that's from Ruba, Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report's coming to you as the annual quality, the air quality, annual progress report for 2002, and that's a requirement under the Environment Act. So each year Cabinet receives the latest air quality annual progress report to consider the air quality monitoring data gathered in the last calendar year. So today we're dealing with the 2022 annual progress report for the previous year, so 2021. So this is a good news. Our data indicates that everything is at our air quality is at an acceptable level. As Cabinet members will know, poor air quality is one of the bigger environmental risks to public health. So pollutants, and I've learned this in the last couple of months, such as nitrogen dioxide and something called fine particulate matter, which is PM, also known as PM 2.5, can cause some severe health problems and make others worse. So, you know, more vulnerable people, so children, some older people, or those with pre-existing heart or lung problems are more likely to be affected by poor air quality. So it really does matter that there's a low concentration of pollutants such as nitrogen dioxide and this particulate matter, because it can have an adverse effect on people's health. So while the results of the air quality monitoring in the Vale have consistently, in fact, met the relevant air quality objectives in recent years, the council is committed, obviously, to achieving levels of air pollution that are as low as is reasonably practicable. And I thought it might be just interesting for Cabinet to know how actually the air quality is monitored. Well, I was interested in this, so I'm going to just briefly share that with you. So the air is monitored. It can be both could you have automatic monitors and non-automatic monitors. The non-automatic monitors are monitors that we put in 47 locations, and basically they are tubes which are attached to lampposts near the area that we want to look at, and they're diffusion tubes, and they're made of steel, and they absorb the nitrogen dioxide, which creates chemical change, which then allows us to monitor the levels. So whilst I don't give you live data, that they're collected on a monthly basis by officers, and then that data is analysed, and so that's how we get our data overall. So the report that you have with you and the appendix give you the data, which is very positive for the Vale. So, Chair, I would just ask, I think we have two recommendations. Firstly, the Cabinet notes the monitored results gathered for the previous year, so 2021, and that secondly, Cabinet approves this 2022 annual progress report and the appendix, so that this report can be submitted to Welsh Government for approval. So I so move, Chair. And I hope you are all duly impressed with my knowledge.
Absolutely stunning. Thank you, Rupert. I'm delighted to second those recommendations, and I think that actually some of the comprehensive data in here hopefully will provide reassurance to residents of the current status. So are we all happy with that? Yeah. Yeah. So in relation to item 18 on today's agenda, I have no items that are urgent to put before you today. However, we do have 3 items for discussion on today's agenda under items 19, 20 and 21, which follow on from Mark's earlier reports. And these are matters that are considered to be confidential, and therefore the meeting will now need to move into private session where confidential matters can be discussed under what is called part 2. Therefore, I'll ask for Cabinet to agree to move to part 2 and ask the Cabinet Officer to stop the recording of this open session to ensure that no members of the public are present after this point, and only allow relevant parties to remain to hear the detail of the items to be discussed. Following the meeting, of the meeting, and will advise all parties of the final decisions of the Cabinet for those relevant items. So therefore, can I formally move part 2